Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed we do. We are very excited about the show today because we're going to have a big old election 2024 panel. They're going to tackle
Panels are back.
Who's up, who's down. There was some leaked JD Vance audio revealing perhaps some electoral anxiety on that side. We're also going to get into the big cat lady debate, finally.
It'll be fun.
Much anticipated. We're also going to have them tackle this whole Karens for Kamala and white dudes for Kamala situation. So looking forward to hearing what they have to say about that. Also yesterday, Joe Biden announcing a push for major Supreme Court reforms. Kamala Harris joining that. So we'll break that down for you, what it means, whether or not it is going anywhere. More revelations. I feel like I say this literally every day about Secret Service failures on the day of the Trump assassination attempt. Now we have the text messages that cops and Secret Service were sending to themselves, complete with pictures of the shooter, hour and a half before this all unfolds. I mean, it really is wild what we're learning at this point and how this 20-year-old was able to completely outsmart and stay ahead of all the cops and all the law enforcement that was there on the ground. We're also taking a look at some wild scenes coming out of Israel. This is going to sound like an exaggeration. It literally is not. A mob stormed multiple Israeli military bases in defense of the right of Israeli soldiers to rape Palestinians. I'm not kidding you. That's what happened. It's sort of like you take Abu Ghraib prison scandal, you take January 6th, you put it all together in terms of American political context. So we're actually going to talk to an Israeli journalist about his thoughts as he was watching all of this unfold. And it's actually really shaken some of his own conceptions about his state, which is interesting. His viewpoint, he's sort of like a liberal Zionist. So really looking forward to speaking to him about what this means for the state of Israel. And of course, very consequential in terms of our support of that state and their continuing atrocities in Gaza.
Yeah, I didn't believe it at first, but it's actually all true. And the way you know it's true is that even like the liberal Israelis, they're like, hey man, this is totally out of control. So anyway, super interesting. Before we get to that, as we teased yesterday, we do a big announcement now. Let's put this up there on the screen. We are offering a 30-day free trial of our premium subscription. The promo code is BPFree1. So let me repeat that, BPFree1. You can sign up for it at breakingpoints.com if you're interested. This is just a way of saying thank you to all of our new listeners and subscribers on our YouTube channel. We hear you, we thank you. It has been an extraordinary month over here at Breaking Points, and we want to have you along for the ride. So BPFree1, go ahead and take advantage of that. You're going to get access to the show early, the locals, AMA, and all of the other premium benefits, which you'll see listed there in our description. So the videos, it's in the description, it's in the podcast description, it's wherever it is, or if you're just listening and you just heard me say it again, BPFree1 at breakingpoints.com, and we're going to give you exclusive insights, benefits, etc., especially as we head into the convention. I'm really excited for us all to be on the ground there. We have some great stuff planned, and they'll be the very first to hear about it.
Yeah, so a lot of you all have joined us just in the past month because the politics, news, world, everything has been so crazy. So we wanted to give people an opportunity to try out a premium membership, see if they, find added benefit to it, and also just to mention we have some things coming up that I think you're going to find really interesting, including something that we should be dropping later this week. So stay tuned for that. I won't give you all the specifics, but we have a lot of exciting things planned for this election season, which has suddenly become red hot. It's crazy. We thought we were going into this election of like, no one's really going to care about this matchup between these two dudes that they're sick of. And now suddenly, I don't know that I've ever seen interest in the political horse race as high as it is right now.
It's the highest it's ever been.
So thank you to all of you who've been tuning in and supporting us and liking and sharing, and especially thank you to our premium subscribers. We really appreciate your support.
That's right. All right, let's get to the panel.
We are joined by an A+ panel this morning. This is sort of like our inaugural 2024 political panel, so you guys should both feel extremely honored. On the right, we have Ryan Girdusky, political commentator and the author of the National Populist newsletter on Substack, which I'm told Saagar highly recommends.
I do.
And on the left, we have Michael Starr Hopkins, who is a fantastic political commentator and host of It Matters. Great to see you, gentlemen.
Good to see you guys.
Hey, thanks for having us. Thanks for having me.
So we got a few different topics we want to tackle with you, but I wanted to start by just sort of getting your general sense of where the race is today. And to kick that off, we just got some leaked audio from JD Vance on like a fundraising call where he's talking about Kamala Harris being switched in for Joe Biden and what he describes as a political sucker punch. Let's take a listen to that.
All of us were hit with a little bit of a political sucker punch. The bad news is that Kamala Harris does not have the same baggage as Joe Biden because whatever we might say, Kamala Harris is a lot younger, and Kamala Harris is obviously not struggling in the same ways that Joe Biden did.
So Ryan, let me just start with you, react to those comments, and who do you see as the favorite in this race at this point?
Well, I mean, what he said was true because
Right.
Joe Biden was having serious issues, serious cognitive issues. And Democrat internal polling showed them in a statistically tied race in New Jersey. And when you are behind in New Jersey and you're losing Virginia and you're losing New Mexico in your own internal polling, that's a really bad state for Democrats. So Kamala Harris changes the race in the sense that New Jersey is no longer a toss-up state with her as the nominee. That being said, Trump still leads in the head-to-head national polls by about a point, maybe a little over or under, depending on what polls you're looking at, which he's never led before. He's still in a better race state than he was in 2016 and 2020. He still leads in all three major Rust Belt states. Republican voter party registration is significantly up in all swing counties. So in the end of the day, I mean, Trump probably still has about a 60% chance of being the president in January 2025.
Michael, what do you think?
I mean, look, Donald Trump got shot and then had the Republican convention and really saw no bump coming out of it. So if I'm the Trump campaign, I'm worried. Yeah, they're in the lead right now, but Kamala Harris still hasn't had the convention. She hasn't named her VP nominee. You're seeing this huge enthusiasm boost among young people, among women, among African Americans. I think it's really problematic for the Trump campaign because they've been running the same playbook against Joe Biden for the last, almost 6 years. Well, now they're running a very different race. And the things that I think they want to attack her on are really going to ignite that base of support among women and African Americans.
All right, so let's put this up there on the screen. Let's start with, A2, please, just kind of a general summary from Frank Luntz. And I want to get Ryan's reaction here to how some of the state of the race has changed. Just says Kamala Harris is rebuilding a more traditional Democratic coalition, more paths to 270. Trump is more popular at any time than in the past 4 years, as Ryan noted. Biden's retirement is wildly popular, and RFK Jr. is significantly free-falling in respect to disaffected Democrats are mostly going to Kamala, while disaffected Republicans remain with RFK so far. So Ryan, strategically, what do you think that the Trump campaign has to do differently now that Kamala is in the race, and perhaps either adjust messaging, adjust strategy? Where do you see their campaign right now?
Well, that's the first time I was like, oh, Frank Luntz, let's hear all these mistakes he's about to say.
We picked someone you both would dislike.
So I think what the Trump campaign more or less was doing to Joe Biden was running a very scaled back effort. I mean, they were letting Joe Biden hang himself in the wind, and every time he spoke, it was a negative reaction for Joe Biden. With Kamala Harris, they have to be a little more aggressive because 2019, when she ran for president, she took wildly unpopular positions that many people don't remember. So reminding people of the positions that she took now that she's running away from as fast as she possibly can, every position from Medicare for all to gun buybacks. I'm sure she's going to be against banning all plastic straws, which she said in 2019. I think that that's really where they have to sit there and switch. And I think it took them a second longer than it should have for them to really pivot into a different kind of campaign, much more aggressive than the other. But they are outspending Kamala pretty significantly in almost every swing state now.
So, Michael, in addition to they'll get to Cat Lady and some of that stuff in a minute, and DEI and all of that. But the core argument that's being made by the official campaign apparatus and the Speaker Johnsons of the world is the one effectively that Ryan is making, that Kamala Harris had these quote unquote extreme positions when she was running in the Democratic presidential primary. She's already come out and said, I no longer believe any of those things anymore. I'm a totally different person. To me, that's more of the true knock on her, is that she doesn't actually have any ideological grounding. She shifts depending on what's convenient for her in that particular political moment at that particular time. But if you're advising the Democratic Party, how do you defend against that attack, either that she's a flip-flopper or that she's too radical, extreme, liberal, coastal, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, look, Kamala Harris has been called a lot of things, but at her core, she's been a prosecutor. She's been an attorney general. So the idea that she's too liberal, I think, is probably not something that's going to stick. And look, when Republicans are running that Democrats are against plastic straws and Democrats are running that Republicans are against abortion, I think that's going to be a really problematic message, because every hit that Republicans are going to try to take on Kamala Harris is going to be about liberal, about climate change, about things that really aren't driving voters right now. The thing that's driving voters right now is fear that Trump's an authoritarian and fear about the banning of abortion and the banning of autonomy. And so it just feels very out of touch what Republicans are talking about right now. And it's why I think the label of weird is really working for Democrats, because what Republicans are talking about is weird.
We'll save the weird debate that's coming for the cat lady section. Let's put this up there on the screen. Kamala Harris's favorability. And what it is that her morning consult, July 22nd, her approve, disapprove was 43-51. Whereas after she entered the race, it is now approve, disapprove 50-46. Almost all of that is Democrats who previously viewed her, disfavorably and have basically switched. But it represents something significant, Ryan, which is a very enthusiastic Democratic base that we haven't seen previously. So with Trump, how would he adjust in terms of thinking about the race, where he no longer has the significant enthusiasm advantage that he once had? And what does it mean reaching out to swing voters? Does it just mean driving up that percentage even more? How would you see it?
Well, I mean, Biden, so against Biden, yeah, he had a huge advantage. I mean, but Biden was asleep. Yeah. I mean, literally, he made Ben Carson look energetic. So I think that that's really a position that he was thriving in. I think that against Kamala, the difference is as popular as she is, she's still 10 points behind non-white voters than Joe Biden was in 2020, according to the Wall Street Journal poll. New York Times poll, she's the worst performing Democrat ever with African Americans since Richard Nixon. And she, once again, the campaign has really just began. She hasn't sat down for a major interview. She hasn't asked, hey, what did you know about Joe Biden's cognitive decline? They're going to make her own Joe Biden's issues over the economy, over the immigration. Obviously, they've already started doing that. And I think for Trump's campaign is, run up the margins. Because she's doing so poorly with non-white voters, the Sun Belt still seems out of reach for her, although obviously Georgia's in a little bit of a tighter position.
Yep.
And he now still leads in every Rust Belt state. Pennsylvania is the only Rust Belt state, by the way, that the polls were pretty accurate for in both 2016 and 2020. And Trump's it's the RCP average, but it's 3 points. On other polls, it's about 2 points. So in the state with the most accurate polling, Trump's lead is pretty substantial.
So if you look at I was just going to say, if you look at the Fox News battleground polls, they're tied up in all those states with the exception of Minnesota, where Kamala Harris is up by 6. So I actually agree with you, Ryan. I think it probably is 60-40 in favor of Trump at this point, because if you look historically at the polls, you're right to point out 2020 at this time, Joe Biden was up like 9 points in these same polls. However, I don't think it's accurate to say that according to the polls, she is significantly down in the battleground states, and she's obviously dramatically improved Democratic performance among young people and among all voters of color, Black and Latino in particular.
That's not true. That's not true.
That is 100% true.
That's absolutely not, Krystal, because what you're
doing
compared
is
to
Joe Biden. No, as compared to Joe Biden.
As compared to Joe Biden post-debate, where he literally said he defeated Medicaid, and you both, by the way, had aneurysms live on air. Yes, she's done better from that point.
Right.
She's about exactly where Joe Biden was in March, though. And she's still the worst performing Democrat right now among Latinos and Blacks in modern history.
There's a reason for that, though. So when you talk to African Americans, one of the biggest worries about her isn't whether she can win. It's whether white people will vote for her. It's very much the Obama-esque Iowa situation. Black support has a tipping point. We have to believe that white people will vote for her before we're willing to give our support. Now you're seeing this huge tipping point, which is why you're seeing the influx in voter support, especially among young people. You see the African-American women for Kamala, the Black men for Kamala, now there's the Latinos for Kamala. You're going to see a huge inflection point, which there's an undercurrent. Trump had that undercurrent in 2016, and we couldn't really poll for it because these were unlikely voters. I think you're going to see the same thing in this election. Among likely voters, Trump is winning. But among unlikely voters, new voters, young voters who aren't usually engaged, you're going to see, I think, a 2%, maybe 3-point bump.
Ryan, one thing just really quickly, I'd like you to weigh in on something I've been thinking about, and I wonder if you think there's anything to this. When it was Biden versus Trump, it was very clear who was the change candidate, right? Biden's the incumbent. Yeah. He is like, run it, restore democracy, right? I mean, that's his whole, like, I want to bring things back to a pre-Trump era. That's his whole pitch, right? Very clearly the incumbent status quo candidate, and Trump very clearly the change candidate. Kamala Harris, I think, scrambles some of that calculus and makes it a lot less clear. And I think she is trying to play for the lane of I'm the change candidate in a year where I think that's probably pretty compelling. Now, that may seem counterintuitive given that she's the sitting vice president of the country, but let's be honest, she was basically sidelined by the Biden administration. So she doesn't have that sense of incumbency around her, and just by merit of the fact that she is a lot younger and she is a biracial woman, she feels really fresh and different, which is why you're seeing so much like unbelievable off the charts enthusiasm, fundraising, et cetera. I mean, do you see that as a challenge that the Trump campaign is going to have to grapple with? What do you think are some of the weaknesses of the Trump campaign and mistakes that they're making at this point?
That's a really good observation. I agree with that because on the surface, it does look like the change candidate. And then when you look and you boil it down to a lot of the positions, she is the vice president. It depends on how much of Biden's Biden's time in office sticks to Kamala versus being a brand new candidate. I mean, the great irony of Kamala Harris is 3 weeks ago, she was online anyway. She was considered somebody who looked at the show Veep and thought it was aspirational. And now she is the great savior of the Democratic Party overnight. I think a lot of things have to happen in the sense that Kamala doesn't really have a campaign theme yet. It's only been 10 days. It feels a lot longer, but it's only been a few days. Over the next 5 weeks, she will be tested since she'll have a VP, she'll have the DNC, and she'll probably have her first series of really, major interviews. And then we'll be able to sit there and see, okay, can she hold up to, the expectations that have been presented by a lot of Democratic commentators? Because as of right now, she's a fairly untested candidate. She only ran for nationwide office once, and it didn't go super well. So I think the next 5 weeks is really where it's going to boil down.
Michael, you think that's fair, Michael, before we move on to cat ladies?
Yeah, I do. I'll point out 60% of her donations in the last 7 days have been from new donors. And I think that's the number that should really scare Republicans.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.